Welcome to Football Canada's Under Review podcast, Special Football Canada Cup edition. I'm your host, Phoenicia, and I'm here with Aaron, and we're coming to you from Richardson Stadium in Kingston, Ontario at Queen's University. We've been here since last weekend covering the Canada Cup, and so far, what are your thoughts on Kingston?
Man, the city has been amazing. Like the downtown core is fantastic. The beach like along the lake is really nice. And then, I mean, obviously you can see the stadium. It's probably one of, if not the newest / basically everything you can ask for in an amateur stadium.
I think it's
awesome.
probably one of the nicest stadiums I've ever been in.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I've been in a lot of football stadiums, but the ones that I have been is definitely the nicest. And the city itself is super, super nice. And I didn't realize how close the university was to the beach, which is wonderful.
And the downtown core, so like kind of everything between the university and the stadium and the beach and the downtown core, it kind of feels all kind of pretty centralized. And Kingston's kind of got a unique feel to it. It's a little bit of a older city feel where there's actually some design to the architecture, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's been a great city. And Queens as a host,
they've been fantastic. Yeah, they've done everything that you need in a host city, basically, to be able to provide obviously top-notch facilities, but the volunteers have been fantastic across the board. And our volunteers that work at these events, they put in a lot of time and a lot of energy, and we really appreciate it.
And we've also been really lucky to have wonderful weather, except for today.
Well, so it's not so today. It's
not
hopefully
bad.
we get the humidity out today, so then that way
the next game day is not super humid like it has been the past few days. But it is what it is. It's still been great football all week.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the football yet, or do we have an ad read?
I have an ad read
Okay,
before
let's do
we
an
get
ad read.
there. I know you're excited there.
I know, I want to talk football, but okay, ad read.
Alright, so today we want to thank Game Breakers Headgear for supporting Football Canada with their premium soft shell helmets, each made with patented D3O shock absorption technology to minimize impact in practice and on the field. Protect the player, protect the game. Game Breakers. Alright, so let's just go back a little bit back to game day 1 of the Football Canada Cup. So we had 4 games. It started with Alberta defeating New Brunswick 39-6, and then Quebec defeating Manitoba 31-7. Do you want to touch on those 2 games before?
Yeah, so when we see the first day of the tournament, is it's a tough day and it's an interesting day at the same time, because you have your 1 versus 8 seed, you have your 2 versus 7 seed. So generally, your first 2 games, I don't want to say are predictable, but based on where people are seated, you should be able to know what the outcome is. And the outcome was exactly what we thought. So Alberta over New Brunswick, Quebec over Manitoba. But the thing was, both these games, although the score maybe doesn't indicate how competitive they were, both New Brunswick and Manitoba played unbelievable. So that Quebec-Manitoba game was an 8-1 game at halftime.
Yeah, I was shocked by how well Manitoba was able to hold their ground in that game, and they played very, very well. Yeah. And by halftime, I was like, wow, this is not the game that I was expecting, and it made for an exciting game, that's for sure. And the same with New Brunswick when they played Alberta. I don't think the score reflects how well they played, like you said, but it was a pretty exciting game.
The other thing that I want to talk about New Brunswick is that, we have some pretty big provinces and we have some small provinces. New Brunswick is a new province in this tournament overall in the grand scheme of the picture, and what they've been able to do in their short time in this tournament is really impressive, and they have a lot of talent on that team.
I was actually talking to someone earlier today about New Brunswick and how it's so impressive that given that they're such a small province, how good they are and how good they're becoming, and it just shows how strong their program is out there, given the number of kids that they have to select from, and then bring a team out and compete against a big province like Alberta or Quebec. It's crazy.
Yeah, and their dedication to their high performance program to be able to to get as much out of their kids as they can to be able to compete at this level. It shows in the score, and I would encourage people to watch those games because they are very competitive and good games.
Yeah, and even like the Saskatchewan Nova Scotia matchup, which was our third game of the day on the first day, Saskatchewan ended up winning 37-0. But I don't think that it was as bad as it looks.
Yeah, well, so here's the thing that we talked about in our earlier podcast in the preview. In all three of these games, penalties and turnovers make the biggest of difference. And in this instance, similarly, Nova Scotia, it was just penalties and turnovers that made the score look a little different, because for the most part this is a very competitive game. Now, don't get me wrong, Saskatchewan played a great game. Yes. And they have a lot of talent across the board, and I mean, we'll talk about game day 2 in a second, but it's reflective in this, and not so much reflective of Nova Scotia, but more reflective of how talented that Saskatchewan team is.
Yeah, and then our last game of the day, which was probably our closest one, and definitely the one that most people kind of had to maybe flip a coin on in their brackets, like who was going to win. But we had Ontario taking on British Columbia, and Ontario ended up winning 16-14. So what were your thoughts when you were watching that one?
So this one came down to the wire, but initially it was the story of kind of two halves, where the first half Ontario dominated. They really came out the gate and showed what we expected of this tournament. A team that had a big offensive line, that could run the ball, that could make plays with their quarterback. And then BC sparked it the second half, right?
Yeah.
Like it kind of flipped on its head. But then when push came to shove in the last minute, when Ontario had to close out this game,
they did.
They went back to the run game. They allowed their averaged 300-pound offensive linemen across the board to just run the ball, and that kind of what closed out the game. But between the two teams, they seemed very competitive across the board. They were, again, it still comes down to BC made a couple small errors here and there that took it. Gave Ontario the step.
That game could have gone either way. Like it was a really good, exciting football game. That's for sure. Do you want to move on to game day 2? Yeah,
game day 2. So the semifinal game day. So for everyone who watches this, it'll probably be Friday. So this for us is a day after. So we're still recovering from basically game day 2 of probably some of the best football I've ever watched in my football career, and. So
it was very exciting. We started the day with Nova Scotia taking on British Columbia, and
so that game was, if you would have had that circled, I would have thought that BC probably would have came out and continued what they did in the second half of the Ontario game and just kept rolling.
Yeah.
But that's not really what happened.
No, it wasn't what happened at all. I think a lot of people were a little bit shocked at the outcome of the game. Like, BC ended up winning 38-17.
Yeah.
But it was pretty, if I remember correctly, it was pretty close for most of the game.
It was. And what you saw from this was the resiliency from Nova Scotia to be able to say, okay, we took a pretty tough loss to Saskatchewan, and on the scoreboard it looked pretty one-sided, but that didn't prevent them from coming out yesterday and really making a statement to say, this tournament's not over, we're going to keep competing, and we're going to do everything we can to play this game.
Do you think it makes a difference coming into this tournament and play, so Nova Scotia, they're going up against Saskatchewan, defending champs of the Canada Cup.
Yep.
Like, how do you think it's harder for those kids coming in? Like, saying, oh, we have to play the best team that there is out there? Or do you think it's more of a motivator for them?
I think it's a motivator for sure. And the other thing is, generally the way, I perceive it is that it's a great measuring stick for who you are as a team and where you're going to go in those next 2 days in the tournament. Mm-hmm. Obviously if you win, that's a great indicator of who you are, but even when you lose, it's a great indicator of what you're able to do so that you can take that in the next game. And I thought they did a good job of that. The thing that I would also say about BC is that although they didn't, I think, keep the momentum so much from their second game, they did the same thing they did the first game. They came out a little slow, and then they just came out full cylinders in the second half and then took over this game in the end. We'll talk about some players, but the running game really took a step up, and I thought the coaches did a good job of realizing where they maybe had some advantages that they could take from the first day, and took advantage of the second day.
Oh, I agree. And I think the story with Manitoba and New Brunswick, which was our second game of game day 2, it's pretty similar.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good football game as well, and Manitoba ended up winning 36-16 in the end. But what were your thoughts there?
So this game, I thought, was the tale of two really good quarterbacks. Manitoba and New Brunswick had quarterbacks that made the right reads, made tough throws, were able to move the ball. But I think the biggest thing here that stood out to me was Manitoba's linebacking core. They were impressive. Like, those guys flew around, they were making plays, and I think that the talent of their linebacking core was maybe just a little too much. Not to mention, their running back had 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So,
what was his name?
So number 21, and he had 2 rushing touchdowns, I think. Actually, I think all 4 of his touchdowns were in the first half. So,
which is crazy.
So I'm probably going to butcher this name, but I will do it, and I will apologize to him after. Ishienezu Matanga. He's 5'10", 220 pounds. He is the hammer on the nail. He's just downhill running, and he had a great day. And it was tough for them to stop him. But, again, another player we'll talk about, Xavier Malone for New Brunswick. He went toe-to-toe.
He had a heck of a game, man. Yeah.
So those were our 2 first games, and then let's get into those insane, crazy semifinal games that we had.
Okay, so I guess we'll start with Alberta and Quebec. This was probably the best game of the day yesterday.
Potentially it could be the best
game of the tournament.
Let's say, I don't know if I've ever seen a better football game.
That was just...
Because anything that could happen did happen.
It was crazy, and I was on field level for that entire game, and that last play that Alberta made to tie, or eventually that led them to tying up the game at the end, everybody on the field was just they had no words, and everyone's jaws were just open, what just happened?
Okay, so let's set this game up a little bit. Yeah. So Alberta and Quebec, this is the second year in a row that they've played each other in a semifinal game. Last year, Alberta defeated Quebec to move on to the finals. There's a rivalry here that is building every year, and it's great for this tournament.
It is.
And the game that happened on this field yesterday is just another addition to that rivalry that is going to probably go down in this tournament's history. So, what was the final score?
It was 27-29 for Quebec.
So close game. In how many overtimes?
4 overtimes, and Quebec won on a field goal in the end, which is insane because every overtime it was someone's gonna win it this time, and then the other team just came back and was nope, we're going again. And it was very exciting to say the least, but being on field level, seeing the stress of all the players and the coaches, and it was it was crazy.
So what was your impression of the game leading up to overtime?
It was close the entire way. I was surprised at the fact that they both went for a more defensive approach, and it was just a showdown basically between their defense, but sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I agree. I think that defensively, both teams did a really good job of basically setting up the game because both offenses are very high powered. Both of those teams in the first game scored over 30 points against, again, I would say pretty good New Brunswick and Manitoba defenses, and both defenses. They basically had to play a quarter and a half extra. Of a game, and by the time that end of the game, both teams were just exhausted.
They were
defensively.
Yeah.
The fact that this game ended in field goal and not in touchdowns is something to really point to how well that those defenses played across the board, considering how much offensive talent. Quebec and Alberta's receiving corps on both sides were fantastic, and I thought both defenses did a really good job of at least limiting big plays, because we didn't see a ton of big plays.
Yeah, no, we definitely didn't. And it was just, I honestly still don't really have words to explain like how crazy it was, and that the catch that
so
I have the name here.
So
Dawson Gladue, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so Dawson Gladue over here, just you guys can see it in the film, over in that far right hand corner. They're I think on their 40-yard line, and Eli Hetlinger just chucks one up, and DB instead of spiking it down, accidentally, maybe tips it up, and that's going to be one that he replays in his head forever.
For a long time,
Lucky they won the game, but and Dawson Gladue just snags it out of the air, breaks a tackle, and then ties the game up.
It was crazy because it was like everything that like Alberta would want to happen ended up happening. In that play, and it was like the Hail Mary effort paid off.
Yeah, it's TSN top 5 turning points of the game. Like it could easily be in TSN. So let's talk about both quarterbacks really quick for a second. I thought that both Aloha and Eli had very good
games.
Yeah. Both of them threw for 2 touchdowns. Eli unfortunately threw an interception that may have proved costly during the game, but didn't ultimately affect the outcome in overtime. But both of those guys made plays with their feet and made plays in the air. I thought that they were basically the keys to both of their team's success on offense.
What about, let's switch a little bit to defense.
Okay.
We had on Alberta our linebacker Costas Zanis. What were your thoughts on his game?
So Costa's been in the Football Alberta program for a while. He played U16, he played U16 Eastern Canadian Nationals, and he was all over the field. He was making plays, sideline to sideline, and for a linebacker to be able to move like that, to be able to get into the backfield, to be able to play coverage, he did a really good job. And in overtime, when everyone else is tired, it seemed like he hadn't lost a step, basically. He was still buzzing to the ball. Yeah, he did a great job.
And then on the Quebec side, what about, I apologize if I do not say your name correctly, but Edwin Wilson Tara Collange?
Yeah, so both Edwin and Nelson Tawa, their linebacking core, coming into this tournament, I was unsure about the linebacking talent in our country right now. Coming out of this tournament, I have no question at all that some of the best linebackers are right here, and 2 of them, well, we already talked about Costa on Team Alberta, but both Edwin and Nelson, both of those guys are big, athletic, they fly to the ball. Alberta's run game was interesting. It was either big plays or tackles for losses, and a lot of the reason here was because of these 2 linebackers. They had a great, and getting into, we'll preview the gold medal games, but those guys are going to be guys to watch as we move forward.
For sure. Okay, let's move on to our final game of the day yesterday between our defending champs, Saskatchewan, and our hometown team, Ontario. So what were your thoughts there? Sask ended up winning 23-15. That was the final score.
Yep. I thought that Sask came out of the gate and they were firing all cylinders. They did a really good job of capitalizing on Ontario's mistakes early. And, there was a point in this game where I thought that Sask was going to run away with it. And Ontario showed a lot of resiliency. At one point I believe it was 21-0 or 20-0. And it was very easy that you could just step away and say, okay, there's the defending champions. They beat us last year. Let's just roll over. And that's not what happened. They stuck in, and Keegan Hall, quarterback for Team Ontario, he pretty much exemplified what I think the resiliency of Team Ontario for the rest of the game, because he took some hits.
He did.
And he just kept getting back up. Yeah, the entire game. And he just kept moving, he kept getting up, he kept making throws, and in the end, it came down to the last series of the game. Actually, a couple times the last series of the game where Ontario still had a chance.
Yeah, they had a chance right up until the end, that's for sure. What about, since you're talking about quarterbacks, let's talk about Sask's quarterback, Noah Pelletier.
Yeah, he is potentially, if not the best, quarterback in this tournament right now. He has been close to perfect as you can be at this level. He's made great throws. He's made great decisions. he has put balls in places that you expect university level quarterbacks to throw. And I think he's just had a command over their offense. And the biggest thing in this tournament is he just hasn't made any mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about that a lot in our pre-Canada Cup podcast about teams not making mistakes because it's such a short tournament and everything matters basically.
Yeah, and Noah's had a lot of help too from his receiving corps. They have a couple of receivers between Daniel Weeb and between Riker Frank at running back and Taggart Rowell. Like, these guys really were productive for him. We'll talk about Daniel Weeb a little bit in the preview, but you know, his route running is unbelievable, and he's not a big guy, and he's playing their boundary receiver, so generally against the best corners on opposing defenses, and
he's making things happen.
Yeah, he's doing a really good job. And you know, Ontario, I think the biggest thing that happened here is their run game. I think if they would have stuck to the run game just a little bit more, relied on their offensive line, because their pass protection wasn't great. Keegan was taking a lot of hits.
He was.
But their run game, you know, they were moving, they were grinding, and you know, it's a tough loss for them. And I think that, like I said earlier, they showed a lot of resiliency. I think that they're going to learn from this, and I think that Alberta Ontario game is going to be a really good game between two really good teams that, you know, have something to basically prove now at this point.
Well, since you were talking about that, let's tee that up maybe.
Okay.
So Alberta, Ontario, they'll be going at 3 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, July 13th for the bronze medal. What do you think?
So this is going to be basically a game dictated by offensive and defensive line. I think both teams are similar in that they have big, strong offensive lines that they want to establish the run, and they have quarterbacks who have been good, and they want to take that to the next step and reduce their errors. And on defense, you know, really the thing that might set this over the edge is it's just whoever's going to step up defensively. And you know, from what we've seen with Alberta, what they were able to do with Quebec, you know, a very high-powered offense to be able to keep them to field goals rather than touchdowns, to have, you know, Costazanis running around the field, or Charlie Deland playing, you know, great in the secondary. It's going to come down to who's going to be able to make plays on defense rather than, because I think it's going to be a ground game for the most part for both teams.
I think so too. I think it's going to be a tight game.
Yep.
The entire way, and it should be very exciting to watch.
And there's no love lost between either of these teams either.
No.
You know, Ontario and Alberta have had their games in the history of this tournament that have been very close and have been very competitive, and I don't expect anything different.
No, I don't either. So, who's your pick?
Well, you know, I'm gonna have to say Alberta, and I think that.
You're not going for the hometown this time?
No, and so this was my thinking. Originally, I was going to say that Alberta at this point is probably exhausted. They played an emotional game. They played basically a game and a half.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, when we talked about that, you know, playing a tough game and is that motivation, I think that there's just a fire burning in Alberta right now, and that is just going to be tough to put out. But at the same time, Ontario has shown a lot of resiliency in this tournament. So although I think this is going to be a really close game, I'm going to give the slight edge to Alberta in this one.
So I'm going to actually give the edge to Ontario here, just to keep it interesting.
Hey, might as well, right?
No,
then at least one of us can be right, and then...
yeah, we'll see what happens. But no, I think Ontario's played 2 very strong games so far, and I think they also have that motivation after being knocked out by the defending champs. I think they're going to want to come back with a little bit of a vengeance and claim that bronze medal, especially since last year they didn't get it either. So.
Yeah, so we'll, you know...
And they're at home.
We'll have to watch the game on Saturday.
They got their fans.
See what happens.
Alright, okay. Before we get to the gold medal game, let's just tee up quickly the 2 consolation games. So... Our first one is it's a battle of the Maritimes, so New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. That's going to be 9 a.m. on Saturday, July 13th.
So you talk about teams with history. These are two teams that actually see each other twice before they get to this tournament.
A lot, yeah.
And they play each other a lot, and they're very familiar with each other. And in their series, where they played 2 games prior to coming to the Canada Cup, they split them. So I think they're very equal teams. I think across the board, I think New Brunswick has a little bit of edge quarterback-wise, although Nova Scotia's quarterback is very good as well. I think that Nova Scotia, from a defensive perspective, has some talent, but Xavier Malone is just a different beast on New Brunswick.
Okay, can we just talk about Daquan Downey from Nova Scotia?
Yeah, okay, let's talk about Daquan.
Okay.
So wait, is he a running back or is he a linebacker?
You tell me, because
he
won offensive MVP in the first game when he played running back, and then in the second game he was playing linebacker and won defensive MVP. I don't know if that's ever happened before in the Football Canada Cup.
I mean, not since I've been watching, and I think he played better at linebacker than he did at running back, and he played really well at running back.
Oh, he did.
He was on defense. He was making tackles all over, and I think he had a really good nose for the ball. And it's impressive for someone to be able to one game play, especially in a tournament like this where time frame to learn schemes and systems is not overly vast. So for him to be able to go from offense over to defense and then to be able to make an impact like he did was really good. So defensively, you have Daquan Downey in Nova Scotia, and then in terms of New Brunswick, Xavier Malone. Those are guys that are going to make plays on defense.
But then both their quarterbacks are also pretty good with Alan Young for Nova Scotia and Caleb Tremblay.
Yeah.
Or no, Samuel Tremblay.
Yeah. The brother of Caleb Tremblay. Yeah.
Samuel Tremblay for New Brunswick.
Yeah.
So we'll see. It'll be an interesting
I think it's going to be a good game.
Sure.
And, it's basically the best 2 out of 3 series. They both split 1-1 prior to coming here. So this is for them. This is bragging rights in the Atlantic provinces.
Sure. And then the other game, we have British Columbia taking on Manitoba for, I guess, the 5th place. And that's at 12 p.m. on Saturday. So, what's your take here? I think this is going to be a really, really close game.
To be honest with you, I was thinking about this earlier. I actually don't know who I would pick for this game. And so when I set this up...
Pause.
Okay.
You didn't make your pick for New Brunswick and Nova Scotia.
Oh, you're going to have to make me pick. I'm going to pick... I'm going to give the edge to New Brunswick. I really like what New Brunswick has been doing. And for nothing else other than I just think Xavier Malone might be one of the better players in this tournament, and his impact has just been felt in all 2 games. So I'm going to give them the slight edge in that one. Yeah.
I'm with you on that one. Okay, let's move on. British Columbia, Manitoba.
So like I was saying, I think they're both equally matched. I think that Manitoba has a edge in the quarterback play. I think it's been a little bit more consistent. I think that BC's run game is a little bit better, and both Manitoba's linebacking core has been really, really good. They have 2 guys, number 2 and number 5 for Manitoba, Isaac Dawkin, and then his counterpart, number 5, Jaden Angle, have been very good. Like, they're both big linebackers, like 6'3", 220 for Isaac Dawkin, and Jaden is 6'1", 210 pounds. Okay,
so this is a little bit of a tangent, but it is crazy how big some of these guys are for being like 16, 17, 18-year-olds. Like, I'm standing there on the sidelines and I'm like, holy, like I feel like a tiny person. These guys are really big and they can move and they're good.
Well, speaking of moving, both Isaac and Jaden kick return for their respective teams. So it's like you have middle linebackers who are big and can move and are returning on kickoff. I think those guys are guys to watch. I really like BC's running back Noah Anderson. I think he has a lot of explosiveness. I think that he's able to extend plays, get first downs for them. And a guy that I think they need to be able to try to get into the mix a little bit more is Nolan Olin. We saw a little bit more of him in game 2, but he's a big, tall receiver who will win matchups. He's just had a tough time because every team...
touchdown in game 2.
Yeah, he had a touchdown, and he's been double covered basically
every game.
Every game. So between those two, I think it's gonna be a really close game, and I'm gonna let you tell us first who you're gonna pick, and then I might just pick the opposite of that, to be quite honest.
I honestly, like, this one is tough. I think I'm gonna give the slight edge to Manitoba. I think they've just played so well for the past 2 games. Like you said, they're a big team, and I like their quarterback. I like their linebackers. I don't know. I gotta go with Manitoba. My gut's telling me Manitoba.
Well, then my gut now tells me that I'm going to pick BC because I believe their run game under Norway Anderson and their head coach Corey Philpott, who's a legendary running back, they're gonna run this game to a 6-point game. That's what I'll say.
6-point game. Okay, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, my predictions haven't been good so far, so we'll talk about our brackets. But
okay, so let's the gold medal game.
Gold medal game.
So we got Saskatchewan, the defending champs, taking on Quebec. What do you think?
So, like I said about Alberta, Quebec must be tired. Like they just spent everything. So for them, the challenge here is going to be making sure that they take today to get themselves back healthy, to get rested, to not only physically rested but emotionally.
I think the mental thing
engaged.
is a big thing, a big part of it too. And I know they won the last game, but like get themselves prepared for a very, very good Saskatchewan team is going to be tough.
Well, they were basically on an emotional roller coaster throughout that whole game. So, and the hardest thing a lot of times in football is not necessarily the physical aspect. It's about staying in check, staying focused. So for them, that's going to be the big key. And I think for Saskatchewan, focus has never really been an issue for them. They always seem like they've got that down pat. It's going to be about, can they make sure that up front, facing, like they did with Ontario, facing a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit stronger offensive and defensive line, can you make sure that you're sound technically? Can you make sure that you're getting where you need to be? And can you make sure that you keep what you've been doing throughout this process, not making mistakes, not killing yourself? Because I think that's going to be an area that Quebec really needs to focus on to be able to ensure that you can't make mistakes against Saskatchewan. You can't take 15-yard penalties. You can't turn over the ball because Saskatchewan will capitalize on that.
Yeah, I agree. Do you want to talk a little bit about Saskatchewan's Seth Hundeby?
So
he had 2 really, really, really great games.
Another linebacker in this tournament that is just blown me away. So he is a big guy, and he moves like he's not that big. Like he moves around the field and he makes plays. So Seth had to play kind of out in the slot a little bit based on what Ontario was doing. So Ontario was trying to flex Seth Hundeby out and try to put him in pass coverage. And until Saskatchewan was able to make a couple adjustments, Seth was out on an island and did a really good job against a really good receiver from Team Ontario. So his versatility is really good. Like he is 205 pounds, he's 6'3".
He's so tall.
And he's got a lion mane that's just unbelievable.
The guys on their team, they all love his hair.
Yeah. I
remember doing a post-game interview with him, and all the guys are like, make sure you let your hair down.
Well, if for nothing else, watch this game to see Seth Hundeby take his helmet off, because that mane, that lion mane, is fantastic.
It's fantastic. I love it.
And the thing is, we've talked about talented linebacking cores, but they have 2 other guys with Seth Hundeby that are really good. So Tyshawn Krushelinski, and Lane Novak. All 3 of those guys are very talented. And a lot of times we'll talk about linebackers because they make tackles, but you have to be able to look up front and look to the defensive line. So Team Saskatchewan's defensive line, maybe they're not getting as many tackles, but they're doing their job. They're making sure that linebackers can come up and make the tackle. And I think they have to be able to continue to do that against a pretty big Quebec offensive line.
What do you think Quebec needs to do to win?
I think it just literally comes down to eliminate errors, eliminate mental errors, eliminate the penalties that can stall drives, because they'll have a big play and then have it negated on a penalty. They're probably as talented, if not more talented, than I've ever seen them. Their receiving core is big and fast, and their quarterback play has been very impressive.
Yeah, Aloha has been impressive to say the least.
Yeah, his ability to extend plays with his feet, his ability to make throws in small windows.
He's also very quick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he's a pretty tall kid too. So he's kind of got that long stride, but he's got a pretty quick stride. I think for them, it's going to be, can their quarterback make big plays? Can they eliminate mistakes? And then on defense, it's just going to be about, can we make sure that Noah Peltier makes a mistake? Can they force an error? Can they force an interception? Because so far, it hasn't been the
Saskatchewan
case.
has played a pretty clean game. So, do we want to talk? Okay, wait, before I ask you.
Yeah.
I have a fun stat.
Okay, so let's talk about everybody else's brackets before we talk about what.
So we had in total 675 brackets.
Awesome.
At the start, and right now we have 143 people left with perfect brackets.
So that means that they've picked everybody correctly, and they picked the gold medal game.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's 21% of people. So that's maybe a little bit lower than I expected, or a little bit higher than I expected.
Well, you look at this tournament, you look at the seeding, and if, say you were, just a relative fan, you would probably just look at, okay, the big provinces, but the big provinces don't always win. Like Saskatchewan is a prime example of that. So a quarter of people, probably a little lower, but were you in that 21%?
No, I am not. Saskatchewan made sure that I was not in that 21%.
You and me both are not in that 21%.
We both had Ontario, Quebec in the finals.
Yeah.
Saskatchewan definitely made sure that wasn't the case.
But like I said in our podcast, I said I'm going to pick Ontario, and Saskatchewan will probably win that game. But
you were regretting your choice afterwards.
So how many people then are picking Saskatchewan to win this?
Well, we have 17% of all of our entries pick Saskatchewan to win the entire thing.
And how many people pick Quebec?
35%.
So right now, the defending champion is the underdog based on
the perception of people.
Okay. If that's not motivation to come into that gold medal game, I don't know what is.
I think it's interesting because I would have, even if I wasn't like a hardcore, following the Football Canada Cup every year, I think I probably just instinctively would have gone with defending champs.
But you didn't.
Okay, but I was like, you put me on the spot.
Yeah, see, neither of us did, and you know what?
But I was really like, Ontario looked good.
Yeah.
They do look good. They are good, and they're well coached, and I was like, you know what? They're playing at home, they could do it.
See, and I think that's the thing that both of us, I think we took home field advantage as a little, I was thinking about it last night, and I think I gave too much weight to home field advantage, and I should have stuck with my original statement, you're not the champion until you beat the champion, and that's kind of how it's going to have to play out from here out. So let's, I guess, make our final predictions for the gold medal game.
Alright.
You want to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm going with Saskatchewan. I think they're going to...
I should have went first then. Okay, go ahead.
You're going to also go with Saskatchewan. They have just been so impressive this entire tournament. Like you said, they've played basically error-free the entire way. Noah Pelletier's been incredible. Their linebacking core is very, very good. They have everything that it takes to win this championship. Not to say that Quebec doesn't, because they do as well. They are also very, very good. But I think defending champs, and I just think that they don't want that title to go away. They want to bring it back home to Saskatchewan, and I think they can do it. They have a very, very good chance of it happening.
Yeah, I agree with all your points, and I think I'm not going to make the mistake again of going against a defending champion, and primarily because they've showed it all week. They don't make mistakes. They make sure they capitalize on your mistakes, and they are tough and hard-nosed, and they have athletes that can move around and play football. But Quebec is not going to make it easy on them, and it's going to come down to the wire. Do I think it's going to be a 4 overtime game? I hope so, because I'm okay with watching that again, and I think everybody else is okay with watching that again.
Hey, it's great for the sport.
That's why, and I keep saying it's great for our stream too, right? So, but I think that when it's still going to be a really close game. I know we've basically called close games for all these games, but I think this one, if nothing else, it'll be a battle right till the end.
Well, I think both the bronze and the gold medal are going to be.
Yeah.
They're going to be tight, and they're going to both be like incredible football games. So make sure you guys all tune in. You can watch on our YouTube channel at Football Canada, or there's a link to the stream also on our website www.footballcanada.com.
And don't forget to follow us on social media. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube, and we'll catch you next time.